For those of you who know me or don't know me, my name's Sean Robertson, President of Strategic Technology Associates. I've been doing this for, well, a long time, almost 40 years. And there's a lot of things going on in the world today, many of which you've probably heard of and some not. So I thought today we would talk about what's going on from a security perspective in terms of things that frequently get missed. So from an agenda perspective, we're going to talk about, what is the actual problem and how big it is, what is it in terms of scope. We'll talk about the 5 most missed cybersecurity items, how you can address it, and then a little bit of advice on how you can help yourself. How big of a problem is it? Many people have heard of Colonial Pipeline. This happened last year. It's a major oil pipeline company that fell victim to ransomware. It was ransomware as a service is how this got triggered. So Colonial Pipeline was a significant issue in the US and it impacted Canada at the same time. Ransomware as a service, meaning people actually paid other people to infiltrate this this network was used. So the people that actually perpetrated the attack had no knowledge on how to actually execute attack. They paid somebody else to do it for them, which is a new development over the last couple of years. What's interesting here is they didn't attack the infrastructure in terms of the distribution of oil and other materials that they move around. They attacked the business network. They didn't target the pipeline operational at all, whether it was out of good conscience, whether they didn't get access to it, who knows. But as you know, they actually did get shut down. The network, the people that owned it, and based on the advice of Homeland Security and some other people, were very concerned about what might happen given what access they may or may not have. So they actually shut down the operational network at the same time. And I guess it's a big example of what can happen. But here's a company moving hundreds of millions, or if not billions of dollars of commodity across North America, and has to shut down operation because somebody paid someone else to help them do something, and it triggered a shutdown. I don't know if you remember, but people were going with grocery bags to the store, to the gas station, to try and get gas so they could save some in case things went a little crazy. So it happens, and it happens big. But of course, ultimately they ended up paying $5 million in ransom. Now, of course, the question you ask yourself is, how does that apply to me? I'm not going to pay $5 million ransom, probably. Likely, most of the people on this call don't have $5 million to pay as a ransom, although they may have the insurance to cover it. But that's known. So most ransomware, and I know you've heard of ransomware, most of you have before, I'm going to get to the details in a second, but affects middle market, small and medium business. So 71% of all ransomware happens to small and medium business, and they know that you don't have $5 million. They've got people on staff that look at your network, get inside your accounting systems, find out how much are you insured for, how much is sitting in the bank, and then they gear their ransom demand based on that. So they're hitting you. It still hurts, but they're hitting you where you actually have the capacity to pay. And the question, of course, is, well, why, right? Because small businesses are much easier to target. They generally don't have a budget that's dedicated for IT. They have limited technical resources, and they're more likely to adopt technologies that are easy to deploy, right? So rather than looking necessarily for the secure solution, they're looking for the one that they can take care of themselves with the resources that they do have. So what's really at risk here? At the end of 2021, an attack was happening every 11 seconds. And again, I'm using, the industry term here is FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I want to be clear that this isn't really all about fear. I'm going to get to the solutions here in a second. I just want to make sure we understand what we're dealing with. But every 11 seconds, the scary part for someone like me, as someone who works in security and who owns a business, and what should be the scary part for you, is that the average time an attacker spends on a network before they do something is 19 days. So that's 19 days of poking around in your accounting system and your client records, looking for invoices that they can redirect, whatever interesting things they can find before they actually execute on their ransom attack. The average ransom payout has really increased. It's up over 468%. It's over 200, almost $250,000 now. When I first started dealing with ransomware attacks, quite a while ago, I think the first one I dealt with was maybe 8 or 9 years ago. They were asking for 1 Bitcoin, which today is still a lot of money. I don't know what the going rate is, somewhere between $20,000 and $60,000, depending on what minute it is in the day, I guess. But it was generally a $500 to $600 problem. And then all of a sudden it jumped to $3,000. And as the business model started working for them, it became more and more. So now the average is about $230,000. But that's not the only cost. It's the remediation that really gets people, right? Now, most people have heard the message, get insurance now and put some security in place. But the average cost of remediation is over $750,000, bringing it to $1 million event. And I get it. Most of us aren't sitting around with $1 million in our account that we A, could afford, or B, want to give away. But that's what's happening in the real world right now. So ransomware isn't really the only concern, right? It is a concern, but business email compromise, or BEC, is just as big a concern. Ransomware means somebody's got to get inside your network, and obviously we've proven that it happens. But BEC is where we start to use a target's tendencies and social knowledge against them by first identifying them right here, then grooming them, then we start exchanging information with them, and then ultimately we execute on a wire transfer. And, you know, I hear the same things from people all the time. Oh, that'll never happen to me. I've got processes in place. We don't transfer money unless somebody verifies. But I know of several businesses in this area in Atlantic Canada that will swear up and down they don't do those things. They don't have problems with those things. They always double verify. They always do things, yet have transferred away $250,000 or $500,000 because it's a normal part of life to transfer money away, just not to the bad guys, obviously. Here's a few statistics on it. 1.8 billion lost in email compromise fraud. That's people, you know, wiring money away to somebody else, asking for gift card purchases, getting employees to do things they wouldn't normally do. The average loss is much smaller at 92,000. You know, we talk about $500,000 and $250,000, but lots of these transactions are $10,000 or $20,000. There's a nonprofit in the area that just a couple of weeks ago lost $20,000 to business email fraud or business email compromise. And it's unfortunate. They don't have insurance and they're not going to get covered from it, but it happens at all scales. 2,200 times a day. The scale of that blows me away. I don't know anything that happens 2,200 times per day, but that certainly does. And unless it's discovered quickly, there's very little chance you'll get your money back. That nonprofit I mentioned, they transferred away $20,000 and they didn't know there was a problem for 4 weeks because they were pretending to be somebody, a representative of something they were actually buying. They thought they sent a down payment on something. And then when, of course, the company who was expecting the down payment never received it, went through their books, sent out their collection notice saying, hey, we haven't received your down payment yet. That's when they discovered, but that was 3 or 4 weeks later, zero chance of recovering that money, unfortunately. So that's about the problem and how big it is. What I want to talk about now is the 5 most missed security items that can actually help you with this. First thing, firewall and antivirus are not enough. You need them. They do important things, and I'm not going to get technical here. I'm you know, in 17 minutes, I'm trying to cover a lot, but fileless malware is really what this is all about these days. So they take advantage of good software that's on your machine to execute other things. Tools like you've probably never heard of called like PowerShell and so on. They gain access to those. Your antivirus thinks it's normal activity and doesn't stop it from happening. And that's really the trend. As you can see, it was up 888% which is the last time I have numbers for in 2020. Traditional antivirus doesn't see it. It uses those legitimate applications. And here's the sad part. Most of the time, the end user has no idea this is happening. I know you've all heard, if your computer's running hot, it's maybe being a crypto miner, or it's doing this, and all those things are true. But the reality is you likely will not see any of these things happening if you have a problem with these. Aren't I Mr. Sunshine today? Next big miss is allowing users to manage their own mobile devices. We've only got 5 mobile devices. We've only got 6 mobile devices or 7. It may not make sense to do a group buy from the telco, but not putting management tools on them opens you up to some risks, allowing them to download whatever apps they want. And there are apps on the Play Store and on the App Store that are designed to do nothing except steal information from that phone. And people, they do banking on their phone, they store passwords on their phone, thinking it's secure because it's my phone. But the reality is the apps that they're installing on the device are probably stealing data from them. At a bare minimum, there's data leakage happening where they're gathering data based on permissions that you're agreeing to that you didn't know you were agreeing to. Here's an important one. CIDC, the Canadian, or CDIC, Canadian Deposit Insurance Corporation, does not insure you against cyber fraud. So many people I talk to think, well, yeah, but if something happens, CIDC's there to, the bank's going to get their money and everything's going to be okay. Funds are not covered. You transfer away 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, a million, whatever the number is, they are not covering that claim. CDIC is there to protect against bank failure, not what will be perceived as your lack of security, which is terrible about this whole thing. It's the only thing where the victim is really considered is persecuted, not the actual people who commit the crimes. Of course, your bank may cover it, but they're not obligated to cover any loss that occurs from those. They don't use multiple factor authentication, meaning 2 points of coverage. So I enter my password, then I get a code from some other device to let me log in. 70% of people reuse passwords across multiple sites and services, makes them a huge risk. They don't have proper password hygiene, meaning either they're not complex enough or managed properly. And of course, there's very little end user training going on what the risks are and what they should be looking for in terms of what's good and what's bad when they're accessing their various tools. Let me pull up my next one. Finally, no regular auditing, right? We set it, we put it in place. Most infrastructure is not installed in an insecure manner. It's not. It's installed securely. It works like it's supposed to do. It does what it's supposed to do. However, over time, it ends up insecure because a patch doesn't happen or there's some new threat that gets created. So we need to be looking at these things regularly, and regularly can vary depending on the size of the organization. This is important. The threat landscape actually changes every day. Like what was a threat today may or may not still be a threat tomorrow, but I can guarantee there's a new threat tomorrow. And rarely is ownership or management aware of the risks of what's going on, right? Because the IT team or whoever's managing it, if somebody is managing, is busy doing their thing as they should. Nobody's going back and looking at those old things to see what's going on with them. So I'm going to move into how you can address these things. And again, I'm moving quick because we've only got 17 minutes. So antivirus and firewall, you also need to put threat hunting software on your machines and zero trust software. It locks the machine down so that only pre-approved applications have the ability to run. And it goes a long way towards keeping your device and your data and your employees safe. It's critical. Next thing, excuse me, is you should be taking a look at mobile device management so that you can control what goes on somebody's smartphone. We can stop the applications from being deployed unless it's previously approved by someone who understands and can say, yes, this is good, yes, this is not. And you may have noticed that a lot of these things are inconvenient, and that's unfortunately the dichotomy today. It's not about secure versus insecure, it's about secure versus convenience. To protect yourself against the bank, make sure you're using multi-factor authentication anywhere you possibly can. Never accept emailed instructions for wire transfers or payment redirects. You can look at it, but always verify via voice or some other method that it's indeed legitimate, and implement anti-phishing software. It'll keep a lot of the initial requests to compromise your employees away, and you won't see them. Implement multi-factor authentication as soon as possible. It's not hard. It can be expensive or not, depending how you look at it or what you implement, but it's critical to any business. And of course, make sure you're filtering links and attachments as you go through. From an auditing perspective, we say monthly for no audits happening. Some organizations quarterly probably makes sense, but you need to go through, be doing a vulnerability assessment, and make sure you've got really good documentation of what the results were and how you remediated for the future. Now, that's the end of my 17 minutes, but I want to put this up here for you. It all starts with what's available on the dark web. And if you want to find out if your credentials and your information are available and being sold around the world, I'm happy to do that scan for you. If you go to https://getstrategic.ca/dark-web.scan, you can put in a little bit of details. I'll need your email address. We'll scan the dark web for you, and we'll give you a shout with the results back. I'm not going to try to sell you anything, I promise. I just want to share the information with you. If it makes sense that I can help you with some of those other things, I'm happy to do it. But this will at least get you the scan, and you'll know what you've got available for data.